Hi everyone, I'm Rob Shapiro from Fitchburg State University, and this is the BACB's 5th edition task list item G-20, Use Self-Management Strategies. So what is self-management? Well, it's the personal application of behavior change tactics that result in a desired improvement in one's own behavior. And this can include one-time events as well as long-running behavior change programs. And it's important to note that the desired change must occur for self-management to be demonstrated. We can try to change our behavior, but if we don't actually succeed in changing it, we don't have self-management. So important to note that it's the personal application of behavior change, right? We are putting it in place ourselves that result in that desired improvement in one's behavior, which can be these momentary things that we just do from moment to moment to change a momentary instance of behavior, or it can be long-running things that are basically targeting lifestyle change. There are multiple applications and benefits of self-management strategies. One can include living a more effective and efficient daily life, such as by making a to-do list. These are the things that I want to get done today, and then following through on that to make better use of our time. We can use it to break bad habits or acquire good ones, such as using self-management to quit smoking. We can use self-management to help accomplish difficult tasks, such as completing a project that has multiple steps and with reinforcement that seems very far away, but involves a decent amount of effort on a day in and day out basis. Or we can use it to achieve personal goals, such as running a marathon that we can't just go out and do without having done lots of things beforehand to be prepared to be able to accomplish that. There are multiple ways to implement self-management. First, we can talk about antecedent-based self-management. And some ways to use antecedent-based self-management could be to manipulate motivating operations, which would be behaving in a way that creates a state of motivation for the desired behavior, or behaving in a way that eliminates a state of motivation for an undesired behavior. Some of you may have done this before. I know that I have. There's sort of that mindset that I'm not going to go in to the store and go grocery shopping when I'm hungry, because I'm going to end up with all kinds of stuff in my cart that I don't really want or don't really need, but I throw in there just because I'm hungry, right? So I might have a snack before I go into the grocery store so that I'm playing with motivating operations. Another strategy could be to provide response prompts. This would be creating stimuli that serve as cues or reminders for future desired behavior. So back when I was younger, when I was in college, I had a job where I was delivering newspapers out of my car. I was doing whole neighborhoods at a time, and I had this habit where I always felt that I needed to lock my car door every time I got out of the car, which that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, except I was getting in and out of the car so much that I had a number of occasions where I forgot to take my keys out of the ignition. And I would lock my car door and close the door, and there I was standing outside of my car, locked outside of it with my car running. And so I put a sign on my steering wheel that said, "Take your keys," just providing me with that response prompt when I went to get out to remind me to take my keys out of the ignition. Another antecedent-based self-management strategy could be performing the initial steps of a behavior chain, which starts the process and also serves as a discriminative stimulus for future steps, especially if you have something that you know it's going to be difficult to sort of get the ball rolling. If you just get those initial steps done, very often you can have some momentum going on, you get some immediate reinforcement for those initial steps, and then you also have that discriminative stimulus for future steps. Other antecedent-based self-management strategies can include removing items that are necessary for the undesired behavior. So the response effort for engaging in those responses is higher, right? And this, if we're looking at limiting the amount of junk food that we eat, let's say, not having the junk food in the house, right, is going to make it a lot easier to not eat the junk food. It's not that you can't still eat it, but now I've got to leave my house and go down to the corner store and buy the junk food to be able to eat it. So it makes it less likely that I'm going to do that. Likewise, we can limit the undesired behavior to restricted conditions and then further restrict those conditions over time, right? So if someone's a smoker and they're looking to cut back and quit smoking, and typically they smoke anywhere in their house, they might say, okay, I'm not going to smoke anywhere in the house. I'm only going to smoke on the back porch. Okay, and then once they're only smoking on the back porch, they might say, okay, I'm not even going to smoke on the back porch. I'm only going to smoke when I'm out in the yard. Okay, and then you know what? I'm not going to smoke anywhere on my property. Okay, and by continuing to restrict the conditions under which I can engage in the behavior, it makes it less and less likely I'm going to engage in that behavior. In a similar manner, we can dedicate a specific environment for a desired behavior and access that environment when it's time to engage in that behavior. A number of creative people and people that are very productive, let's say prolific writers, tend to engage in this kind of a self-management strategy where they set aside a specific location that this is where my writing takes place. Okay, and when it's time to write, they go there because that place is dedicated to writing, and they find that it's easier for them to engage in the behavior because they're in the location where that behavior is supposed to occur. Moving away from the antecedent-based approaches for self-management, we can also talk about self-monitoring strategies as a means of self-management. Self-monitoring is a procedure in which a person observes their own behavior and records its occurrence or non-occurrence. So at its heart, self-monitoring is just what it sounds like. It's just monitoring. It's just data collection. But self-monitoring can become an intervention on its own due to reactivity. So reactivity, again, is just by virtue of watching something or by virtue of data being recorded, sometimes the behavior in question changes. So from a self-management standpoint, just sometimes by watching our own behavior and taking data on our own behavior, we change what we're doing. Independent of anything else. So self-monitoring can become an intervention on its own due to that reactivity. Self-monitoring, though, can also include self-evaluation and goal setting, which can provide a layer of automatic reinforcement. So here, it's not just recording data, but it's evaluating those data and saying, this is where I want to be. And now I'm going to take data on it, and I'm going to pat myself on the back. Hey, nice job if I met my goal. And maybe I'm going to give myself a little bit of a hard time if I haven't met that goal. So that level of self-evaluation and goal setting can make self-monitoring even more effective. And it can also include programmed reinforcement, which would typically be an item or activity that can only be accessed if a preset criterion is achieved. So I'm again continuing to take my data, I'm evaluating how I do, but now if I met what I set for my criterion, I'm going to give myself something or allow myself to access something as a reward for like, hey, you did it, nice job, and I'm going to give that to myself. Other self-management tactics can include things like self-instruction, which is covert or overt verbal behavior that functions as a response prompt for the desired behavior. So if you've ever, before you engage in some task, said, okay, here's what I'm going to do, you sort of like psych yourself up for it, right? And you go through the steps that you're going to engage in. You're engaging in a form of self-instruction. That doesn't have to be out loud, right? It doesn't have to be overt, although it can be, and sometimes it is. You can just say it to yourself. And you're still engaging in self-instruction, okay, without saying it out loud. Another tactic can include habit reversal, which is self-monitoring the interfering behavior, and when you see it occur, interrupting that behavior and engaging in some behavior that is incompatible. This should sound very similar to response interruption and redirection that we might do with someone else to try to reduce their interfering behavior. We can do it with ourselves. Oh, I'm doing that. I want to stop, and now let me do something that's incompatible with it. We can also use self-directed systematic desensitization, which is gradually exposing oneself to increasingly aversive situations while practicing relaxation skills. This is kind of a tried and true strategy that is used in conventional therapy when someone might have a phobia or just be really reluctant to go into a particular situation or be around particular stimuli. It's a pretty common strategy to work with that person on using relaxation skills or coping skills, and then gradually exposing themselves to increasingly aversive or increasingly more intense situations where they're encountering whatever it is that's making them anxious. But we can do this to ourselves too, right? We can say, okay, I know I don't like to be in crowds. So I'm going to work on my coping skills. I'm going to relax, and I'm going to go into kind of a small crowd. I'm going to go hang out around a couple of people. And then once I can do that, okay, let me go around a few more people. Then let me go around a large room of people. Let me go into a big conference, right? We can gradually increase our own exposure to aversive situations. Or as another self-management tactic, we can engage in massed practice, which would actually be forcing oneself to repeatedly engage in undesired behavior if it happens once. And we can think about this as a form of contingent effort. It's important to note it's not really related to overcorrection, because in overcorrection, we're engaging in the desired behavior, whereas with mass practice, we can think of this more as negative practice. We're repeatedly engaging in the undesired behavior if it happens once. To be like, oh, you did it once, now you got to do it a whole bunch of times. And in theory, that becomes aversive and makes us not want to do that in the future. So some suggestions for how we would go about effectively implementing self-management strategies. Number one, we want to specify a goal and define the behavior that we want to change so we know what we're working towards. That's something that we might do with behavior change for someone else, so why wouldn't we do it for ourselves? Secondly, we want to self-monitor the behavior so we have baseline data and so we can evaluate whether we're having the desired effect on behavior, whether we're actually changing it. Third, we may want to contrive contingencies to compete with natural contingencies, so there are immediate consequences for each occurrence or non-occurrence. If we think about this in terms of, we'll go back to that junk food, right? Why do we eat junk food? Because it tastes good, right? So we eat the junk food and we get that immediate natural contingency of that delicious taste in our mouths, right? So we may want to have some kind of contrived contingencies that are immediate, that basically compete with that good taste that we're experiencing. Other strategies can include going public with our commitment to change our behavior, and this arranges additional social consequences, right? So it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to quit smoking, and I'm going to put these strategies in place to help me quit smoking. It's another thing to then tell all of our family, hey, I'm going to try to quit smoking. These are the things that I'm doing today, right? Now you're going to get questions. Hey, how's it going with quitting smoking, right? There are going to be people that are going to be looking to see that you're doing it. Or very often people may post on social media, hey, I'm embarking on my new whatever the behavior change plan is now, right? Hey, I'm in training to run a marathon. You know, people are going to be asking, hey, how's your marathon training going, right? And if you haven't been keeping up, you're going to have to tell them, well, I'm not really doing it. I'm not doing so great, right? So going public can be an effective component to your self-management strategies. Likewise, we can get a self-management partner. We can find someone else who's working towards the same goal and sort of partner with them. This helps create group contingencies where you're holding each other accountable in kind of an independent group contingency. And then also, we can look to, as with any behavior change procedure, we always want to be continually evaluating our program and redesigning it as needed. As a reminder, at the very outset, we talked about that for it to be self-management, our behavior actually has to change. So we need to be taking data. We need to be evaluating and determining, are my interventions actually changing my behavior? And if they're not, as with any behavior change procedure, we may need to make modifications to make sure that our procedures are effective.